when we talk about the settlers, we should remind everyone that this is not a small, extreme group of people who worked independently. The settlers are totally supported by the Israeli government. The prime minister in the state of Israel, sir, has been the CEO of the settler. He's a settler. And he was the leader, one of the most important leaders for the settlements in the West Bank. They have a few ministers who are settlers. They have a few members of the Knesset who are settlers. And they are totally supported by the vast majority of the Zionist parties in the Israeli Knesset.
Raising awareness about the suffering of the Palestinian people under the Israeli occupation in the United States and other Western communities is of high importance. Dr. Sami Abu Shehadeh, a Palestinian leader of 1948 historic Palestine, is visiting the United States and giving a lot of information about the Palestinian suffering and about the racist and discriminatory laws drafted by Israel and imposed on the Palestinians. For more on that, I have with me Dr. Sami Abu Shehadeh from the United States via Skype to talk more. Welcome to our program, Dr. Sami.
Thank you very much for this kind invitation. Thank you.
Dr. Sami, we listened and we watched a lot of presentations and speeches for you in different events in the United States talking about the suffering of the Palestinian people and the situation that the Palestinians go through under the Israeli occupation. How effective such kind of presentations and how much impact it could have on the American community, please?
I think these kinds of meetings and talks to the American audience and in general to Palestinian communities and a lot of politicians here in the state are very important because the image that the state of Israel has in this part of the world is very far from reality. Israel, everybody knows now, it's an apartheid, the state that is having an apartheid regime, but still the image is it is a democracy. This image is far from the reality. This is why we try to meet a lot of people and to try to bring the truth, to try to bring our perception of the true situation of Palestinians. Now, usually people hear much more about the Palestinians in Gaza and in the West Bank. I'm trying also to bring the perspective of a Palestinian citizen living as an Israeli citizen within the state of Israel and to bring the story and reality of 20% of the Israeli citizens who are also Palestinian. I'm hearing a lot of people who did not know much about this story, so it's becoming a very, very important tour.
Yes, and Dr. Sami, you're talking about the importance of promoting the Palestinian narrative, which is based on facts and on the truth. To what extent the Palestinian Arab community in the United States is contributing to that, based on your experience during this visit and maybe other visits in the past you made?
Well, I was very lucky to meet few Palestinian communities in this short tour in New Jersey, New York, and Washington, North Carolina, Chicago, Boston. I was in a few different places. I met a lot of people. In my point of view, their work is strategic work. In my point of view, I think the work in the United States for the Palestinian issue and for justice and peace in Palestine is the second most important point strategically. The most important is our work in our homeland, doing our work all over historical Palestine. But the second most important will be the state, because its blind support to the Israelis has been destroying our present and our future as Palestinians. Most of it is built on ignorance. So I think what the Palestinian community, by bringing the Palestinian narrative and the truth to the American audience, we are seeing some serious changes in the public opinion in the state. I think we saw the result on the event of last May 2021, when we saw this big amount of American people supporting the Palestinians and joining Palestinian demonstration, which proved that working on the American public opinion is a very important strategic political work for us as Palestinians.
Yes, Dr. Sami, we know Jewish lobby in the United States, the IPAC, is very strong. And when they tell any senator, just jump, he asks how high. No discussion at all. Do you think that the change you are talking about at the level of the public opinion is going to affect also the political level, the American administration, the Congress, the Senate? Is there a possibility for such kind of change?
First of all, I think there's a possibility, but we should know that it's going to take time because we are changing here the public opinion, which for decades was very supportive for Israel, and their information was based mainly on Israeli lies. But in my point of view, I think you can lie to part of the people part of the time. You cannot lie to all the people all the time. Now, when people are knowing more what's happening exactly in Palestine, they know more about what's happening by Israeli regime as an apartheid regime. Things are changing. I think later on we will see also important results on the level of Congress and Senate and decision makers. This would take a little bit more time. Meanwhile, there's a good work in the academy. We are seeing a lot of work in the universities. Now I'm on my way to Chicago University. A week before, the law school in Harvard University published another very important report that describes Israel as an apartheid state. This report is joining few very important reports that were published before by the Israeli B'Tselem NGO, by Amnesty, by the Human Rights Watch, a lot of Palestinian NGOs. So also Harvard now is joining this, and we saw another few days ago, another important report, independent report for the UN that also said Israel is an apartheid state. I think the world is seeing things are changing. To see also the political change that we need and we want, it's going to take us a little bit more time. This is why working on the international level, mainly in the state, is very strategic.
Yeah. Dr. Sami, while we are talking now, the Israeli settlers are carrying out attacks against the Palestinian citizens in the occupied West Bank and Jerusalem, and it's too dangerous now for the Palestinians to travel from Ramallah to Nablus, from Nablus to Jenin. No safe roads in occupied Palestine because of the settlers' attacks, and the Israeli government, the Israeli police, the Israeli army are turning blind eye to these crimes, and they are always on the side of the Israeli settlers. While you're going now to Chicago University, and when you talk about such situation by the settlers, how would the students, the American students in such universities, perceive that from your own perspective?
First of all, when we talk about the settlers, we should remind everyone that this is not a small, extreme group of people who work independently. The settlers are totally supported by the Israeli government. The prime minister in the state of Israel, sir, has been the CEO of the settlers. He's a settler. He was the leader, one of the most important leaders for the settlements in the West Bank. They have a few ministers who are settlers. They have a few members of the Knesset who are settlers. And they are totally supported by the vast majority of the Zionist parties in the Israeli Knesset. So we are not talking about a small, extreme, marginal group. We are talking about the most powerful group inside the state of Israel, which is supported by all the Zionist political leadership, except maybe Meretz and few marginal figures. But in general, this is not a small group, and it's supported nearly with all the Zionist parties. Their violence is not new. Jewish terrorism led by settlers against Palestinians have been going on for decades. We have been complaining and writing reports about that for the whole world. Unfortunately, this double standard of the Western world, this is what I'm talking about in all the universities. While when the victim is an Arab or a Palestinian, they care less. This is the whole issue. This racist double standard society must change. We believe in human rights as universally human rights. We think that human rights belongs to everyone, no matter what his color is or his ethnicity or any other identity. We struggle for justice, peace, and equality for all people. This is what we also expect from those who believe in human rights to do the same.
Yeah. My final question to you, Dr. Sami, you coming back to your homeland, to Palestine soon, and I wish you a comfortable and good journey back. But you know, the Israeli extremists and the Israeli lobby in the United States and the West always assault the people who talk about the truth and about the facts of the Israeli occupation and its practices against the Palestinians. So, what do you expect when you come back from the Israeli
First of all,
extremists?
they did not wait till I come back. Their wave of incitement has started with the beginning of our journey. But this is exactly what I tell them all the time in our discussion. They should ask themselves, why are they so terrified when I am telling the truth? Why are they so terrified that people would know what happened? Because they know exactly that they have a lot to hide. They know exactly that this fake image of a democracy is fake. They know exactly what they are doing in destroying Palestinian lives, being violent against all Palestinians all over historical Palestine, building a racist entity, and preventing our people from the basic self-determination right, like all other nations all over the world. Israelis know exactly what they are doing. This is why they attack anyone who criticizes Israel and Israeli policy. So they have already started their wave of incitement against me. I'm seeing this on my social media, and I'm seeing this also in different Israeli newspapers. Unfortunately, I can't say that, but we are used to this incitement, and we are going to continue struggling for peace, justice, and equality for all, whether they like it or not.
Dr. Sami Abu Shehadeh, Palestinian leader of 1948 Historic Palestine, it has been a great pleasure having you on our program. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Welcome to you, Dr. Sami. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching. And from me, Osama Nazal, have a nice time.